What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews, exclusively here as always on the Casa D18 Studios channel. I, of course, am your host, the Renegade JJ Williams, and the silent film era is over for our monster movies. Today we begin the affectionately known era of the Universal monsters. And the only place to begin is with the first one released, 1931's Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi, Helen Chandler, David Manners, Dwight Frye, and Edward Van Sloan. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me here once again for another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews. And like I said during the introduction, the silent film era of our monsters is behind us. And yes, technically, The Hunchback of Notre Dame and The Phantom of the Opera, both with Lon Chaney, are technically Universal monster movies. The Universal monster era didn't really begin until 1931's Dracula, which is what we're about to get into today. And believe it or not, it was actually released statewide on Valentine's Day of 1931. It had been released in New York 2 days earlier on the 12th of February, but its nationwide release was on Valentine's Day, which just helps to perpetuate the romanticism that our culture has with vampires, the suave, elegant, aristocratic, as Bela portrays Count Dracula in this film. Now, our movie opens with Renfield, a solicitor who is traveling to Count Dracula's castle in Transylvania on a business matter. The local villagers fear that vampires inhabit the castle, and they warn Renfield not to go there. But Renfield refuses to stay at the village inn and asks his carriage driver to take him to the Borgo Pass, where he's to meet another carriage at midnight. Now, Renfield is driven to the castle by Dracula's coach, with Dracula disguised as the driver. Now, en route to the castle, Renfield sticks his head out of the window in order to ask the driver to slow down a little bit, but he notices that the driver has disappeared, and instead a bat is leading the horses. Renfield enters the castle and is welcomed by the charming but eccentric Count Dracula, who, unbeknownst to Renfield, is a vampire. And I just got to say right here, his whole introduction line, "I am Dracula. I bid you welcome." So iconic. So iconic. And anybody that tries to impersonate Dracula automatically goes to that accent and is just doing Bela Lugosi at the end of the day. Now, the two men begin to discuss Dracula's intention to lease Carfax Abbey in England, where he intends to travel to the following day. Dracula ends up hypnotizing Renfield into opening a window, but Renfield faints as a bat appears. Dracula's three wives then close in on the fallen Renfield, but Dracula waves them away and then attacks Renfield himself. Aboard the schooner, the Vesta, Renfield becomes a raving lunatic slave to Dracula, who hides in a coffin and feeds on the ship's crew. Now, once the ship reaches England, Renfield is discovered to be the only living person on the ship, and Renfield is sent to Dr. Seward's sanatorium, which is adjoined to Carfax Abbey. At a London theater, Dracula meets Dr. Seward, and in turn, Dr. Seward introduces Dracula to his daughter, Mina, her fiancé, John Harker, and a family friend named Lucy Weston. And Lucy becomes fascinated by Count Dracula. And that night, Dracula enters her room and feasts on her blood while she sleeps. Sadly, Lucy dies the next day after a string of blood transfusions fail. Renfield becomes obsessed with eating flies and spiders, anything with blood, while Professor Van Helsing analyzes Renfield's blood and discovers his obsession. He starts talking about vampires that afternoon, and Renfield begs Seward to send him away, claiming his nightly cries may disturb Mina's dreams. When Dracula calls to Renfield through the medium of a wolf howling, Renfield is disturbed by Van Helsing, showing him wolfsbane, which Van Helsing says is used for protection from vampires. Dracula visits Mina asleep in her bedroom and bites her. And the next evening, Dracula enters the home for a visit, and Van Helsing and Harker notice that he doesn't cast a reflection in the mirror. When Van Helsing tries to reveal his discovery to Dracula, Dracula smashes the mirror and leaves in a hurry. Van Helsing deduces then that Dracula is the vampire behind the recent tragedies. Mina then leaves her room and runs to Dracula in the garden, where Dracula attacks her and the maid finds her. Newspapers then begin to report that a woman in white is luring children from the park and biting them. And Mina recognizes the lady as Lucy, who has risen as a vampire. Harker wants to take Mina to London for safety, but is convinced to leave Mina with Van Helsing. Van Helsing orders Nurse Briggs to take care of Mina while she sleeps, and to not remove the wreath of wolfsbane that he has placed around her neck. Renfield escapes from his cell and listens to the men discussing vampires. But before his attendant takes Renfield back to his cell, Renfield tells them how Dracula convinced him to enter the sanatorium by promising him thousands of rats full of blood and life for him to feast on. Dracula enters the Seward parlor and speaks with Van Helsing, and Dracula states that Mina now belongs to him and warns Van Helsing to return to his home country. Van Helsing swears to excavate Carfax Abbey and destroy Dracula. Dracula attempts to hypnotize Van Helsing, but Van Helsing's resolve proves to be too strong for the Count. As Dracula lunges at Van Helsing draws a crucifix from his coat, forcing Dracula to retreat. Harker visits Mina on a terrace, and she begins to speak of how much she loves nights and fog, things that are kind of peculiar because she never really enjoyed that stuff before. A bat begins to fly above them and squeaks to Mina, causing her to then attack Harker, but Van Helsing and Seward save him. Mina then confesses what Dracula has done to her and tells Harker that their love is finished. Dracula hypnotizes Nurse Briggs into removing the wolfsbane from Mina's neck and opening the windows, while Van Helsing and Harker see Renfield heading for Carfax Abbey. They see Dracula with Mina in the Abbey, and when Harker shouts to Mina, Dracula thinks that Renfield has led them there and kills him. Dracula is then hunted by Van Helsing and Harker, who know that Dracula is forced to sleep in his coffin during the daylight, and the sun is beginning to rise. Van Helsing prepares a wooden stake while Harker searches for Mina, and our movie ends with Van Helsing impaling Dracula through the heart, killing him, and thereby returning Mina to normal. Now, as far as the telling of Dracula goes, this is, in my opinion, the superior version. It's definitely better than Nosferatu, which was unauthorized, but was still basically a telling of the story of Dracula with names changed. And I honestly have never been able to sit through all the way any of the other versions of Dracula not counting the sequels that we're going to get to in the next few days. Because to me, Bela Lugosi is Dracula. Dracula is Bela Lugosi. They are two in the same. They go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. So to try to see anybody else do it is just something that it doesn't sit right with me. You know, we talk about movie reboots and how we're getting over them. Dracula has been being rebooted for years. For years. But I don't think anybody can argue that Bela Lugosi is the iconic Dracula. Nobody will ever come close to him. Now, in time, as this show goes on over the years, maybe I'll look at Bram Stoker's Dracula. Maybe I'll look at Dracula Dead and Loving It. Maybe I'll look at some of the other tales of Dracula. But for my money, right here, right now, this is the definitive Dracula. I will just die on that hill. The acting is brilliant. The soundtrack. If you watch this movie closely, aside from a couple of scenes, there is no soundtrack. It is just silence in the background, which just adds to the spookiness, the grimness, the atmosphere of the film. And honestly, I think it's a beautiful choice, because if you add in too much music to this film, you're just going to lose some of the luster. Personal opinion. I'm curious to see what you guys think. You know, out there in movie land on YouTube watching. If you're watching the premiere, let me know over here. If you're watching on demand, leave your thoughts down here. When it comes to my rating on Dracula, this movie gets pretty high marks. It's not going to get a full 5 for me, but it definitely gets 4.5. And I can't really tell you and put a finger on why it doesn't get 5 for me. But I just don't love Dracula the way I love some of the others that are coming. So that's really the only reason why I knock it down a peg. You know, I went to go see this film the other day in the movie theaters. Phantom Events hosted this and tomorrow's feature, Frankenstein, as a double feature. And having never seen them on the big screen before, I had to go and have that experience. But maybe it's pacing issues, even though it's only an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes. I checked my phone a couple times to see what time it was, which tells me that, you know, there's certain parts that even though it's a short movie, drag a little bit. So maybe that's the nail in the coffin, so to speak, is why it doesn't get a full 5 from me. Whereas Frankenstein, which we'll discuss tomorrow, I didn't look at my phone at all to see what time it was. So 4.5 out of 5 stars for me. Again, let me know what you think. If you're watching the premiere, leave your thoughts and comments over here. If you're watching on demand later in the day, leave your thoughts and comments down here. Whatever you do, though, when you get out there on social media, let's try to get those hashtags trending. Hashtag Casa D18 Studios, hashtag Renegades Reviews, hashtag Renegade Returns, and of course, the ever popular hashtag Shenanigans. We interrupt this episode of Renegades Reviews for an important announcement about
merchandising.
Merchandising? What's that?
Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Merchandising, where the real money's made.
Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network for all the t-shirts you see here from the West Coast professor, Jeff Meacham himself. You can get shirts for the Jeff Meacham Network, Talk Wrestling, as well as the red and gold Meachamania shirts. And while you're there, don't forget to get your shirts of the Casa D18 Studios Brotherhood, the Dads on Wrestling shirt, the Renegade JJ Williams, Statboy Sports Bar, and the hashtag StatboyApproved shirt. Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network and score your shirts today. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow, right back here on the Casa D18 Studios channel for another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews, when we stick around the year 1931 and we discuss the monster himself in the film Frankenstein, starring Colin Clive, Mae Clark, John Bowles, Boris Karloff, Edward Van Sloan, and Dwight Frye. You're already starting to notice a couple familiar names popping up in this film as well, in Frankenstein. Both Edward Van Sloan and Dwight Frye are going to be in that one. They were in today's film as well. You're going to hear a lot of repetition in actors because this is back in an era where actors and actresses were contracted by studios. So they couldn't go and make a film for Universal one week and then go to Warner Brothers the next week and then go to Disney the following week and then go to Fox the following week, and etc. You were contracted by a company. You were in as many of the films there as they wanted to put you in. So we're going to hear a lot of repeat names over the next few days. You're going to hear a lot of names like Dwight Frye, Edward Van Sloan, Boris Karloff, Evelyn Ankers, etc. And I'm looking forward to getting into all of these classic Monsters films with you because they are some of the films that are just the most nearest and dearest to my heart. So it's really easy to talk about, especially all the ones that I've seen multiple times, very affectionately. So with that in mind, to all my loyal fans out there that have tuned in for the premiere, leaving your thoughts and comments over here, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Likewise, all my loyal fans and viewers out there tuning in a little bit later in the day, watching on demand, leaving your thoughts and comments down here. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate all my loyal fans and viewers that tune in on a regular basis. Show me that love, show me that support. Going back to the archives, watching old episodes of Renegade of Wrestling, Dad's on Wrestling, the original Renegades Reviews audio show, trying to help me get the viewership hours boosted up so I can eventually get monetized, make some money on this endeavor. Thank you very much to each and every one of you for tuning in and joining me today, and I will see you guys next time.